Okay, we're back with the Garrard again. This is the one I put the spring, I repacked the springs on. I have it attached to its motor board. I borrowed the crank out of my Crown. For those of you who do not know, the Crown is a horn machine manufactured in Singapore, or thereabouts, in the 1930s, and also uses a Garrard motor, same as this one. Oftentimes people see those Crowns and think they're crapophones. They are not. I borrowed the turntable off of my Japanese tabletop that I'm still working on because it fits this somewhat fits the spindle and allowed me to set the speed to 78. Now, ordinarily, before I call a job done, I'd like to test this motor under load. Unfortunately, I don't have any way to do that. I don't have the rest of the machine or anything like that. I don't have a tone arm. I do have the reproducer, but no tone arm to go on it. And so all I can really do is set the speed on it, make sure it actually spins. Like I have it wound up about 40 times. Not an easy thing to do when you're on a tabletop like this. I think maximum probably 50 to 55 times this thing will wind, maybe 60. Don't know for sure. No idea what model phonograph this comes out of. It's simply a Garrard turntable with a Garrard motor. Probably a Garrard Garrard motor plate. Not a Garrard turntable. I borrowed that off of the Japanese phonograph. Although that is very likely a Garrard crank, as it is off a machine that has that motor. So we're just going to let it spin. And you can take a look at it. The Garrard motor doing its thing. It's smooth and quiet, as they always are. And being that it's probably 55 degrees out here, maybe less than that, the grease is not solidified inside the spring barrel, so that's always a good thing. I have not greased the motor except for a little bit that got on one gear there. This has to be shipped back to the owner, and I don't want to ship a greasy mess back there. That'll create a tremendous amount of problems when it reaches its destination. So the owner can do that. When it gets back there, it's easy enough. All you do is apply white grease or whatever grease you have, even Vaseline works, to the gears, all the gears in there, except the fiber gear that is here. The one here behind the worm shaft, the spiral gear there rather. One right back there. That is fiber. Don't apply grease to that. Just leave it alone. Don't oil it. Don't do anything to it. If you must put some lubricant on it, I recommend graphite powder, dry graphite powder. Don't really need it though. Smooth and quiet so far. I can't do anything about the speed controllers. I don't have the rest of the parts to do anything with that. Most of the time they don't work particularly well, but you never know. I can't really do much of the brake either because this is not the turntable that belongs to this. Now the purpose here is just to see it spin, do its thing, make sure it's not hanging up anywhere, or making funny noises, or the springs don't suddenly decide to let go. That would not be ideal. As I do not have replacements for these ones, these little tiny, two very tiny springs. And this is one of the Garrard motors that they made. They make a lot of different motors, and they continued on into the electric era. I know that, with electric turntable motors, things like that. It might even be around today, I don't know. This one is definitely from the 1930s, however, so even the late 20s is a possibility. I don't really know much about the history of these things. And I did set the speed using the phone. I really can't show that because I'm filming it with the phone. I left the GoPro off this time. Let's hope nobody calls while I'm right in the middle of this. Watch now, it'll happen. Because I forgot to put it in airplane mode. But this is only going to be for a few minutes just to see it spin. There is not much there's really nothing more I can do with this without the whole machine. So this is going to go back to its owner and they will complete the job. All they asked me to do was have a look at the reproducer, which I've done, and that's playing, and pack the springs for them, which I did. Well, remove the springs, clean out the barrels, replace the springs, and replace the grease with new grease. So that's been done. And I really can't do much. I mean, I can put like a little bit of drag on there like that and see if that sort of replicates the needle stress that would be on the record. But with the two tiny little springs in this motor, this is power-wise, this is equivalent to the single spring you would find in an HMV, like 101 or 102, which is a 102. It's 1 inch wide. It is 12 feet long, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. This would kind of replicate that, except they do it with two small springs, like the Swiss like to do it. You know, Thorens and Pollard, they do that. It's probably an option for larger springs somewhere, but I don't have any handy. But a lot of these motors ended up in portables of one type or another, or small tabletops anyway. So they really weren't looking for a huge amount of power. Enough to play a couple records, maybe. Mind you, these springs are probably 100 years old. So if they play 1.5 records, I'd be amazed. With this type of thing, I usually crank it up each time I play a record to make sure I have sufficient power. And it looks like we're winding down to stop. Any more left in there? Let's make sure. Nope. Appears to have reached the end. Usually I would like to crank this fully 4 or 5 times to distribute the grease on the spring, but it is incredibly difficult to crank this while holding it on a tabletop. So we're going to do it a few times, and again, that will be up to the owner to play some records on it once it's returned and back in its cabinet. And there we go. That's your look at the running Garrard motor.